are starting the deck project. This is the old staircase. I already taken the stairs off the little landing here. So I'm basically just going to redo this all. Take this apart. I don't know, I'll repurpose the wood for something, but I'm making it brand new. So this is the first part of the project and we're going to get started. So this thing wasn't built well at all. I mean, it was just built by just some joker who just put it up just so we had a landing out here. But we're just gonna do this. Because really, I'm just gonna, like I said, salvage whatever I can with this. And maybe I can use this out at my trailer, this little platform. That seems to have been done good because it has the brackets underneath, but everything else was just, you know, done super cheap. Okay, so this is essentially going to be the size of my landing right there. So because it still looks pretty good, I'm going to just reuse this frame, but I will just put on brand new boards on the top. Okay, so I have the deck or the stairs and the landing down. Keep these like this for now because I have a couple dogs, so I'm going to need to let them out every once in a while. So this deck is going to be 16 approximately by 28. So it's going to come right from that end of the house to there, and right to there. So I've already squared off my space, so it's pretty much bang on where these posts are. So the next step is this part of the yard is the low spot, a lot higher there. So I got my gravel up front. It's quarter down gravel. It'll be nice and easy to spread out. So I'm going to start on this side, and that's the next part. Okay, so I started laying out my quarter down gravel towards the house, slants in, so I'm going to focus on all this area. And on this side, it's a little bit low, so I'm going to focus on there. This side's not so bad. In between, I'm going to be hosing down the gravel with some water, helping compact down. We're going to get a rough level here, and then we can start laying our first row of pallets, and we'll go from there. Okay, so here's the progress along the house here. And like I said, this side was the low side, so I'm shoring that up so it's pretty level that way. Now I gotta make sure it's level this way. But so far so good. Here's just a rough estimation of what the pallet platform will look like. So that's just that's just for reference. It's gonna be 4 wide, 8 long. So now, what I'm gonna be doing is I'm basically gonna go 2 pallets at a time. So I'm tying them in underneath to hold this row together. And then when I go sideways, I'm just gonna be feeding through this 3/4 inch little strips of plywood to tie them in from left to right. This is an improvement over my previous deck that I built out at my trailer, where I actually ran these on top of these boards, which wasn't a good idea because then I had to put in extra screws. So this is a definite improvement from that design. So I started my first row here. So I'm just making sure I got a nice level base here. And then I'm going to play off the first row and just do row by row by row. So like I said, I'm just using quarter down, basically pretty much leveling each pallet as I put it down. And then I'm also tying together each pallet here with just a little strap piece of like a 1x3, 1x2. And then as I go along this way, I'm going to tie it in lengthwise too, just to make sure they don't shift. They shouldn't shift because they're going to be, in this quarter down gravel, but it's just a little added precaution. It's not going to take me too much longer. So we're going to start the next row here. Okay, so I got my first deck board lined up. So I wanted to make sure, these boards, they're 16 feet long. I hand-picked 69 boards this morning. Tried to get, as good as possible, but there's gonna be like slight bends in them. So this one, from one end to the other, it was only off about 1/2 inch, so I just pulled this board in. So I wanna make sure that the end of this is the same distance to the end of this, relatively, from that end and that end, because then that's going to be the whole rest of my deck. So I don't want it to be, bowing in the middle. So that's lined up nice. So now I can, tack down, a bunch of boards here, and at least get this section here started, and then we're going to continue on leveling the whole rest of the way. So with the rest of this yard, the way that the yard is graded, I had to shore up this side. So I'm not really going to need too much gravel going this way. So from here on in, it should go relatively quick. Okay, so I got my first 10 or so boards down. I'm happy with the spacing. It's relatively even. The bowing is kept to an absolute minimum. So with these pallets, they're 3.5 feet by 3.5 feet. So it's going to be 14 wide by 28 long. I'm using 16-foot boards. So that's why I'm adding just probably about a 7-inch space here against the wall. So that's why I'm adding these little extensions. And then, probably be cutting a foot and a half off at the end. I may or may not add a little extension like I am there over here. Haven't decided. I'll most likely just keep it the way it is. An extra 7 or 8 inches ain't gonna be too much. So now we're gonna start with this row, get that sucker leveled, and then continue the process on. So I got 17 boards laid down, which is 8 feet wide. Everything's looking nice and straight, nice and level. 8 feet, going 28 feet, so 20 more feet. But now, the progress is going to be nice and smooth. I'm not going to have to add too much gravel. So calling it quits for the rest of the day. My boys at hockey. We're going to pick this up tomorrow. I think I'll probably have this in the next 2 days, maybe 8-9 hours total more work. So I'm pleased with my progress. Okay, so I'm officially done half the length. That's 14 feet. Starting to rain, even though the forecast said it wasn't, but I gotta call it quits for now, and hopefully it lets up a little bit later and we'll continue on. Okay, so on my last row, my knees have taken a beating. Not so much from my knees being weak. These knee pads, they just just dig into the back of my leg. So I basically wrapped a tensor bandage around my legs, just for protection from these. So I'm gonna be buying new ones for sure. So my boy is excited that we're almost done. So he's decided to help me a bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start leveling off the last little bit of gravel here, and then I'm gonna get this thing done. So what I'm doing here is originally, to get my level, I just make sure I got all nice quarter down gravel underneath all these pallets or these slats, tying it together here so it doesn't move this way. And then what I do when I add the next one, I tie it in lengthwise, so widthwise, lengthwise, and then I make sure that I got gravel packed in right pretty much to the top of the slats underneath, so that this thing is not moving. So by using these tie-ins, I can level that part of the pallet, and then down here I just raise that up to match the one right next to it, and it's worked flawlessly so far. Okay, so now comes the time when I cut my end boards flush. So to get the job done just perfectly, using my track saw. So normally you'd have to clamp underneath, but there's holes in the top, so you're able to drill holes, tack it down onto the side, the boards that I'm going to be cutting off, so I don't obviously put more holes in this side. And so far, that line is perfect. Track saw, definitely worth it. Okay. Now as you can see, that line is dead straight all the way to the end. That looks freaking awesome. And so every time you make a cut on pressure treated wood, cut and seal is what you use to treat the cut edge side, so don't skimp on this. Okay, so what I did on the ends here was add a little 6-foot extension or 6-inch extension, because the pallets I used only equaled 14 feet. So I added about 6 and a bit at that edge, and then another 6 inches or so on this edge. So now it's all looking nice and even. So now I'm gonna put the cap boards on the end. So we're gonna work on that now. So there is the finished deck platform all the way around. So now what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna make a nice little slant with the quarter down gravel. Then I'm gonna sprinkle some concrete, just a little bit of concrete all around the edge, so that stays nice and tight, keeps everything from coming out. And then over top of that, we're gonna put river rock and blend everything in.